There is something most people misunderstand about worth. Your worth is not something you have to announce. You do not need to tell people that you deserve respect. You do not need to repeatedly explain your value. You do not need to convince someone to appreciate you. People learn how to treat you by observing what you repeatedly accept, what you repeatedly tolerate, and what you repeatedly demonstrate through your behavior. Your worth is communicated quietly. It is communicated through your boundaries, through your discipline, through the way you respond when someone disrespects you, through the way you spend your time, through the standards you maintain when nobody is watching. And sometimes, without realizing it, we teach people to value us less, not because we are less valuable, but because our behavior sends a different message. Today, we are going to explore 7 behaviors that quietly teach people your worth, not so that you can manipulate others, not so that you can become cold or distant, but so that you can understand one simple principle: the way you treat yourself becomes a lesson that other people learn from. One of the quietest ways you communicate your worth is through the way you explain yourself. There is nothing wrong with explaining your thoughts, clarifying your intentions, or having an honest conversation. Communication is necessary, but there is a point where explanation stops being communication and starts becoming a desperate attempt to earn understanding from someone who has already decided not to understand you. You do not need to turn every decision into a courtroom defense. Think about how often you feel the need to justify yourself. You say no to something and immediately you begin explaining why. You need some time alone, so you give 10 reasons. Someone becomes upset with you and suddenly you are writing paragraphs, trying to prove that you did not mean any harm. Someone misunderstands your intentions, and instead of calmly correcting the misunderstanding once, you keep explaining until you are emotionally exhausted. This habit can quietly teach people that your decisions are negotiable. When you constantly explain yourself, people may begin to believe that if they question you long enough, you will eventually change your answer. If they become angry enough, you will become uncomfortable. If they make you feel guilty enough, you will abandon your boundary. And slowly, without realizing it, you teach them that your no does not really mean no. Your worth is not demonstrated by how many arguments you can win. It is demonstrated by how peacefully you can stand behind what you know is right for you. There will always be people who misunderstand you. There will always be people who disagree with your choices. There will always be people who interpret your behavior through their own experiences, insecurities, and expectations. You cannot control every interpretation of you. If you spend your life trying to make everyone understand you perfectly, you will become a prisoner of other people's opinions. Sometimes you have to say what needs to be said and then stop. I understand that you feel differently, but this is my decision. I appreciate you asking, but I cannot commit to that. I don't feel comfortable with this. That doesn't work for me. These sentences do not require a 10-minute explanation afterward. There is a particular kind of strength in being able to communicate clearly without becoming defensive. You can be respectful without becoming submissive. You can be kind without surrendering your position. You can listen to another person's perspective without allowing their reaction to determine your decision. This is emotional discipline. You also have to understand that over-explaining often comes from fear. Fear that someone will leave. Fear that someone will become angry. Fear that someone will think badly of you. Fear that you will be called selfish, difficult, cold, or unreasonable. But ask yourself something. How much of your life are you willing to sacrifice simply to avoid being misunderstood? Because sometimes the person who benefits most from your endless explanations is not you. It is the person who wants you to doubt yourself. When you are constantly explaining, you are often looking outside yourself for permission to trust your own judgment. You are saying, indirectly, please understand my decision so that I can feel comfortable making it. But mature self-respect works differently. You learn to make decisions carefully, consider the consequences, listen when feedback is useful, and then stand by your decision without needing universal approval. This does not mean becoming arrogant. It does not mean refusing to admit mistakes. In fact, a person with genuine self-respect can say, "I was wrong," without feeling that their entire identity has collapsed. That is another form of strength. You do not need to be right all the time. You need to be honest with yourself. There is also a difference between explaining yourself and seeking validation. Explanation gives information. Validation seeks permission. Now, which one you are doing? If you have made a thoughtful decision and someone simply does not like it, their discomfort does not automatically mean that you have done something wrong. Let people have their feelings. You do not have to manage every emotion that your boundaries create. When you become comfortable with this, your communication becomes simpler. Your words become more intentional. You stop filling silence with unnecessary justification. You stop sending another message because someone has not responded the way you hoped. You stop rewriting your explanation 5 different ways because you are afraid the first one was not convincing enough. You speak, you listen, you decide, and then you allow your behavior to support your words. That is how you begin to communicate your worth without announcing it. Not through arrogance, not through distance, not through manipulation, but through the quiet understanding that your decisions deserve to exist even when someone else disagrees with them. One of the strongest ways you communicate your worth is by keeping the promises you make to yourself. Most people understand the importance of keeping promises to other people, but they often forget that the relationship they have with themselves is the foundation of every other relationship. When you repeatedly tell yourself that you will do something and then abandon that commitment, something inside you begins to weaken. You may still appear confident on the outside, but internally, you begin to question whether you can truly rely on yourself. Think about the small promises you make every day. You tell yourself that you will wake up early, but you press the alarm again and again. You decide that you will stop wasting hours scrolling through your phone, but you return to the same habit. You promise yourself that you will stop contacting someone who constantly drains you. But the moment you feel lonely, you send another message. You say that you will start working toward your goals, but you keep waiting for the perfect moment. None of these individual moments may seem important, but repeated over time, they create an identity. You begin teaching yourself that your own words do not carry much weight. This is why discipline is not simply about productivity. Discipline is a form of self-respect. Every time you follow through on a commitment you made privately, you send yourself a message. I can trust myself. That trust is powerful. You do not build confidence by constantly telling yourself that you are amazing. You build confidence by collecting evidence that you can depend on yourself. You wake up when you said you would. You complete the task you wanted to avoid. You walk away from something you know is unhealthy for you. You continue working even when nobody is watching. These small actions become evidence. And eventually, you stop needing constant external motivation because you have developed internal trust. This also changes how you interact with other people. When you have strong personal standards, you become less desperate for approval. You are less likely to tolerate poor treatment simply because you are afraid of being alone. You are less likely to change your personality to fit every room you enter. You become more comfortable saying no because you know what you have committed yourself to. Imagine someone who has decided that their health matters, their peace matters, and their future matters. When an opportunity appears that conflicts with those priorities, they do not need to debate endlessly. They already know what they stand for. This is what happens when your actions become aligned with your values. You become clearer, but keeping promises to yourself does not mean becoming perfect. There will be days when you fail. There will be mornings when you lose discipline. There will be moments when you return to an old habit. The goal is not perfection. The goal is returning. If you fall away from your commitment, begin again without turning the mistake into an identity. Do not say, I always fail. Say, I broke my commitment today, and tomorrow I will practice keeping it again. There is no need for dramatic self-punishment. There is only the responsibility to return to the path. You should also be careful about making unrealistic promises to yourself. Do not create a life based on extreme rules that you cannot maintain. Start with commitments that are meaningful but achievable. If you say you will spend 30 minutes each day developing a skill, honor those 30 minutes. If you say you will take time each evening to reflect, give yourself that time. If you decide to stop engaging in conversations that repeatedly disturb your peace, respect that boundary. The size of the promise is less important than your consistency in keeping it. Eventually, something changes. You begin to experience yourself differently You no longer need to wonder whether you have the strength to follow through, because you have seen yourself do it repeatedly, and that inner confidence begins to affect everything. Your posture changes, your decisions become clearer, your standards become stronger. You become less impressed by temporary attention because you are building something deeper than attention. You are building self-trust. When you keep promises to yourself, you stop abandoning yourself for convenience, approval, fear, or temporary comfort. You begin choosing what supports the person you are becoming rather than what simply feels easiest in the present moment. That is where real self-respect begins, not with what you demand from other people, but with what you consistently practice when nobody else is watching. Your time is one of the clearest expressions of what you consider important. You can tell people that you value yourself, that you have goals, that you want peace, and that you are building a better life. But your daily schedule reveals what you truly prioritize. Where your attention goes, your life follows. This is why constantly giving your time away can quietly teach people that your time has little value. Many people confuse being available with being valuable. They believe they must always answer immediately, always be present, always solve someone's problems, and always make themselves accessible. They are afraid that if they do not respond quickly enough, someone will become disappointed. If they say no, someone might become angry. If they protect their evening, someone might accuse them of being selfish. So they keep saying yes. Yes to conversations they do not have energy for. Yes to favors they do not have time for. Yes to people who only contact them when they need something. Yes to situations that repeatedly interrupt their peace. Eventually, their own priorities are pushed to the side. This is where you must understand something important. Being kind does not require unlimited availability. You can care about people and still protect your time. You can be supportive without becoming permanently accessible. You can love someone without making yourself available every minute of every day. Your time is limited. Once a minute passes, you cannot recover it. Money can sometimes be earned again. Possessions can be replaced. But yesterday cannot be returned. So when you constantly give your time to things that do not matter, you are not simply losing hours. You are giving away pieces of your life. This does not mean you should become cold or ignore everyone. It means you need to become intentional before saying yes. Pause. Ask yourself, do I genuinely have the time for this? Does this responsibility align with what I need to accomplish? Am I helping because I want to, or because I am afraid of disappointing someone? That last question is especially important. Sometimes we say yes because we are uncomfortable with someone's reaction to our no. But protecting your time may require allowing someone to be disappointed. Their disappointment does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. You are allowed to have priorities. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to work toward your goals without constantly interrupting yourself for other people's demands. and you are allowed to respond later. Not every message requires an immediate response. Not every problem requires your involvement. Not every invitation deserves your attendance. There is strength in learning to say, I can't give this my attention right now. You do not need to feel guilty for having a life of your own. People also learn how to approach you based on the access you provide. If you are always available whenever someone wants attention, they may begin to assume that your schedule will always revolve around them. But when you establish healthy limits, people begin to understand that your time has structure. Again, this is not about playing games. Do not intentionally delay replies just to appear important. Do not pretend to be busy when you are not. Do not use your time as a weapon. The goal is authenticity. If you are busy, be busy. If you need rest, rest. If you have a goal that requires your attention, protect that time. If you want an evening without your phone, take it. You do not have to announce every boundary either. Sometimes you simply change your behavior. You stop answering every call. You stop participating in endless arguments. You stop spending hours trying to solve problems that belong to someone else. You stop allowing interruptions to control your entire day. And you begin giving your best attention to the things that actually build your future, your health, your work, your relationships, your learning, your creativity, your peace, your personal growth. When you begin respecting your own time, something else happens. You become more present when you choose to give someone your attention. Instead of being available to everyone and fully present with no one, you become intentional about where your energy goes. You are no longer everywhere. You are where you have chosen to be. And that is a completely different kind of presence. Your worth is not determined by how many people can reach you at any moment. Your worth is reflected in how consciously you use the limited time you have been given. One of the clearest ways you communicate your worth is through what you do when someone repeatedly disrespects you. Anyone can talk about having standards. Anyone can say they deserve respect. But your real standards become visible when someone crosses a boundary and you decide what happens next. Disrespect can appear in many forms. Sometimes it is obvious, like insults, humiliation, constant criticism, or deliberate attempts to embarrass you. Other times it is quieter. Someone repeatedly ignores what you have asked for. They dismiss your feelings. They interrupt you whenever you speak. They make promises and consistently break them. They only respect your boundaries when there is a consequence for ignoring them. One mistake does not necessarily define a person. Everyone can have a bad day. Everyone can communicate poorly. Everyone can make a decision they later regret. The important difference is what happens afterward. Does the person take responsibility? Do they listen? Do they make an effort to change? Or do they repeat the same behavior while expecting you to keep forgiving it? This is where discernment becomes important. Forgiveness and tolerance are not the same thing. You can forgive someone without giving them unlimited access to you. You can understand why someone behaved badly without deciding that you must continue accepting the behavior. Compassion does not require the abandonment of your own dignity. When disrespect becomes a pattern, your response has to change. You cannot keep explaining the same boundary forever. Imagine telling someone calmly, "I don't want to be spoken to that way." They apologize and make an effort. That is communication. But imagine saying the same thing repeatedly while the behavior continues. Every time you remain in the same situation without changing anything, your actions may communicate something different from your words. Your words say, "This is unacceptable." Your behavior says, "But I will continue accepting it." People pay attention to the second message. This is why boundaries are not simply statements. A boundary is a decision about what you will do when a particular behavior occurs. You might say, "If this conversation becomes insulting, I will leave." Then if the conversation becomes insulting, you leave. You might say, "I am not comfortable discussing this while we are angry." Then you pause the conversation. You might say, "I will not continue participating in this pattern." Then you stop participating. The power comes from consistency. Walking away does not always mean permanently ending a relationship. Sometimes it means stepping away from the argument. Sometimes it means creating distance. Sometimes it means reducing the amount of access someone has to your personal life. And sometimes, when the pattern is severe and persistent, it may mean ending the relationship entirely. The decision depends on the situations. What matters is that you stop confusing endurance with strength. There is nothing noble about repeatedly placing yourself in situations that destroy your peace simply to prove that you can tolerate them. Strength is not the ability to endure everything. Strength is knowing what should no longer be endured. You also have to resist the temptation to retaliate. When someone disrespects you, the easiest response is often to become disrespectful yourself. You want them to feel the same pain. You want to say something sharp enough to make them regret what they did. But revenge keeps you connected to the very behavior you are trying to rise above. Calmness is often more powerful. You can say, "I will not continue this conversation," and walk away. No screaming, no insults, no dramatic performance. Just a clear decision. The people around you eventually learn your standards through repetition. When they see that you are kind but not endlessly tolerant, compassionate but not easily manipulated, and available but not without limits, they begin to understand how you expect to be treated. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to understand it yourself. You stop negotiating against your own dignity. You stop asking how much disrespect you can tolerate. You start asking a better question. What kind of environment allows me to remain the person I want to become? That question changes the way you choose relationships, conversations, friendships, and even the spaces you spend your time in. One of the most difficult lessons in life is learning when to stop chasing. It is easy to tell someone else to let go, but when your own heart is attached, the situation feels completely different. You may keep hoping that one more message will change something, one more conversation will create clarity, or one more attempt will finally make the other person recognize what you have to offer. But there comes a moment when trying harder no longer creates connection. It only creates exhaustion. Chasing can take many forms. It can be repeatedly texting someone who initiates contact. It can mean constantly trying to repair a relationship that only one person is fighting for. It can mean changing yourself to become what you think another person wants. It can even mean spending hours analyzing someone's behavior, wondering what their silence means, why they have changed, or what you could do differently. The problem is not caring. The problem is abandoning yourself while caring. There is nothing wrong with making an effort. Healthy relationships require effort from both sides. You should communicate, express your feelings, apologize when you are wrong, and give people opportunities to understand you. But effort becomes unhealthy when you are carrying the entire relationship alone. Coherence requires reciprocity. If you are always the one initiating, always the one apologizing, always the one checking in, always the one making plans, and always the one trying to solve every problem, eventually you have to stop and observe what happens when you step back, not as a manipulation, not as a test, simply as observation. Give people the space to show you what they naturally choose. Sometimes the truth becomes clearer when you stop forcing an answer. A person who genuinely wants to maintain a connection will usually find some way to participate. They may not communicate perfectly. They may have responsibilities, difficulties, or different ways of expressing themselves. But over time, there is usually some evidence of mutual effort. You do not need perfection. You need reciprocity. This is especially important because chasing often comes from fear. You may fear that if you stop trying, you will lose the person forever. You may believe that letting go means admitting that you were not good enough, but someone's inability or unwillingness to choose you does not automatically measure your worth. Compatibility and worth are different things. Someone can fail to appreciate what you offer and still not make you less valuable. Someone can choose a different path. Someone can change their feelings. Someone can decide that a relationship is not right for them. It may hurt, but it does not mean you need to chase them into changing their mind. There is dignity in allowing people to make their own choices. If someone wants distance, give them space. If someone repeatedly gives you uncertainty, stop building your emotional life around the hope that uncertainty will eventually become commitment. If someone only becomes interested when you start walking away, pay attention to the pattern rather than the temporary reaction. You should not have disappeared to become valuable. You should not have to threaten to leave before someone decides to appreciate you. And you should not have to constantly prove that you are worthy of someone's attention. Real connection does not require you to perform endlessly for a place in someone's life. This does not mean becoming bitter or emotionally unavailable. It means learning to hold your heart and your dignity at the same time. You can care deeply and still step back. You can miss someone and still choose yourself. You can love someone and still recognize that the relationship is not healthy for you. You can wish someone well without continuing to pursue them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop forcing what is not flowing naturally. Return your attention to your own life. Return to your goals. Return to your friendships. Return to your health. Return to the things you neglected while waiting for someone else's attention. The moment you stop organizing your life around whether another person chooses you, you regain something important: your own direction. You no longer wake up wondering who will text you. You no longer measure your value by someone's level of interest. You no longer spend every quiet moment trying to decode another person's behavior. Instead, you begin asking yourself a deeper question. Am I choosing myself with the same consistency that I have been asking someone else to choose me? That question can reveal where your energy truly belongs. And perhaps this is the real lesson behind everything we have discussed. Your worth does not need to be announced. It needs to be practiced. Every day, through the decisions you make when nobody is watching, you are teaching yourself and the people around you what you are willing to accept, what you are willing to protect, and what you are willing to walk away from. When you stop over-explaining yourself, you learn that your decisions do not require everyone's approval. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, you build trust within yourself. When you protect your time, you remind yourself that your life deserves your attention. When you refuse to tolerate repeated disrespect, you turn your boundaries into something real. And when you stop chasing what does not choose you, you reclaim the energy you were giving away. None of this means becoming cold. It does not mean shutting people out. It does not mean believing that you are better than anyone else. It means becoming conscious. Conscious of your time. Conscious of your energy. Conscious of your relationships. Conscious of your standards. And most importantly, conscious of the relationship you have with yourself. Because the way you treat yourself becomes the foundation from which you interact with the world. If you constantly abandon yourself to keep other people happy, you will eventually lose connection with your own needs. If you constantly ignore your boundaries, you will eventually forget what your boundaries were meant to protect. If you constantly chase validation, you will always be waiting for someone else to tell you that you are enough. But when you begin choosing yourself consistently, something changes. You become quieter. You become calmer. You stop needing to prove every decision. You stop reacting to every opinion. You stop chasing every person who walks away. You stop treating rejection as evidence that something is wrong with you. You begin understanding that not every door is meant to remain open. Not every person is meant to stay. Not every opportunity deserves your time. And not Every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. Your goal is not to make everyone recognize your worth. Your goal is to live in a way that makes you recognize it yourself. So from this moment forward, pay attention to your behavior. Notice where you are saying yes when you mean no. Notice where you are explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds. Notice where you are breaking promises to yourself. Notice where you are giving unlimited access to your time. Notice where you are tolerating patterns that repeatedly disturb your peace. And notice where you are chasing something that requires you to abandon yourself just to keep it. You do not have to change everything overnight. Begin with one decision, one boundary, one promise, one moment where you choose self-respect over temporary comfort. Then repeat it, because your worth is not built in one dramatic moment. It is built quietly, through repetition, through discipline, through the courage to live according to your values even when nobody applauds you for it. And eventually you will understand something deeply important. You were never supposed to convince the world that you were worthy. You were supposed to stop living as though you were not. Stand firmly in who you are. Protect what matters. Give your energy with intention. Love without losing yourself. Walk away when necessary. And let your actions speak where words are no longer needed, because the strongest statement about your worth is not what you say about yourself. It is the life you refuse to compromise.